Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Uche and Joker, Sneaker Principal, and welcome to the Sneaker Principal podcast. It is Wednesday, October 12th, and at 10 p.m. And I'm so happy and so fortunate to be here this evening. And I'm excited. I'm excited because tonight I have a topic that has been bothering me for a while, and now I'm going to exercise some courage and talk about it. But before we even get to that, let's go ahead and start off with some ground rules. Again, this is a live call-in podcast, meaning you have the right to exercise, um, reaching out and contacting me directly, and us being able to talk live for everyone to be part of the conversation. As you can see on the ticker scrolling in front of you, if you want to join us live as a video guest, the URL is tinyurl.com/tsp-video-guest. And what happens when you go to that site is going to ask for your information and for you to check your camera and your audio. And then as soon as you dial in, you end up jumping into my green room. And from there, I will invite you into a conversation with me. If you're in the green room, it might listen. I will as soon as I see you in there, I will acknowledge that someone's in the green room, and as soon as the time permits for me to bring you into that conversation, I will do that. So just bear a little bit of patience with me. Then the other way to communicate, I do have a phone line. And at first last week I did here's the phone number, call directly, but then I realized one thing. If you call, my phone starts ringing, then the whole world's gonna know it's ringing. I'm not like set up like, the Breakfast Club or like one of the radio stations where I have somebody here who's screening the calls. I don't have that. I'm switching things around a little bit. All I'm gonna ask you to do is this. If you wanna join the conversation via phone, because that's the better way for you to communicate with me, but via phone, I'm gonna ask you to shoot me an email at askthesneakerprincipal.com, and my email is open right here in front of me on the screen. As soon as I see an email pop up in here, I will look at the email, I'll read it live on air, and if that question, warrants a conversation, then hopefully you leave your number in that email, and I will call you directly. But if you just want to email me, because you just want to email me, that's fine. But if you're emailing me, the really purpose is to pose a question there, that I know you have a question, then I will call you back. Just make sure in your subject line you have I have something to say in your subject line. I have something to say. And again, the email is askthesneakerprincipal.com. But that's pretty much it. And of course, I'm going to ask you multiple times to please subscribe, like, share. If depending on what platform you're looking at, you're watching on right now, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Facebook, and the fourth one is Twitter. Whatever the protocol is there, whether it's subscribe or follow, please do so. But most importantly, please share. Help this algorithm push this content far and wide, please. I'm going to keep. I'm just a polite person, so please, okay. So with no further ado, let's jump in to tonight's topic. And yeah, one more thing, please comment. Please drop any message in the comments. And if you're listening right now, do me one favor. Anyone who's listening, if you could just let me know how the audio sounds. I just want to make sure the audio sounds well. Last session, there was a moment where the audio was kind of doubled up. It sounds great to me. I just need to know from you if anyone can oblige me with just a comment telling me the audio is fine. But okay, topic. So, those of you who know me know that I am a 17-year veteran educator, teacher, dean, assistant principal, and this is my first month and a half outside of a school building in 17 years. Now I work in the private sector, still in education, providing academic support services to public schools and charter schools in New York City and across the country as well. And this is important because academic support is something that's necessary for the success of children, especially students who are struggling. I was one of those kids who struggled through school, and I was in special education. I was put in special education in the third grade, and by the will and the sheer just determination of my mother providing me with all the supports that I needed, I was able to get myself to a place to be successful through school. But not every child has that, and not every school has the resources for that. So I'm just saying that right now because this is framing the conversation we're going to have. So today, there's an article that came my way. I just kind of like reading stuff, and this article. Let me see if I can get my beautiful mug on here. This article is right here, okay, and the article itself is. Oh, sorry. I just want to make sure. Okay, so this article right here. This is for the Wall Street Journal, and it says ACT test scores drop to lowest levels in more than 30 years. Okay, so some of you might be wondering, what's the ACT? Is this like the SAT? It's another of the aptitude tests that students take to be able to to apply for to qualify for college and scholarships and things of that nature. So just like the SATs, and a lot of colleges, a lot of schools have opted to what's the word, to waive tests like the SAT and the ACT, but still it's still a good indicator of the abilities of our students out there. So this article, again from the Wall Street Journal, Jennifer Kalfas, and this is from the 12th. So this is today, and today the 12th. So it's talking about like this test that most of these seniors take, and usually juniors and seniors take this test, and it just pretty much determines, based on a standardized set of skills that you should have coming out of high school in preparation for college. So it pretty much, let me switch mics here. I feel like I'm leaning into. So if it pretty much, tells colleges like, okay, you've done with high school, and this is how you will perform in college based on not necessarily how you perform in college, but this is a determination factor of whether or not you'll be successful in college. And for the first time in over 30 years, the score dropped under. This first line here says the test takers from the class of 2022 scored an average of 19.8 out of 36. Again, average of 19.8 out of 36. The ACT said the first time the average score dropped below 20 since 1991. And the class of 2021 scored an average of 20.3, which is already disturbing. Because again, we're talking about it dropped by 0.5. Is it 0.5? Yeah, by 0.5. Okay, so it dropped by half a point. And the high school you can get is 36, which is hard to get. Let's be honest here. But still, the average national score was already, it dropped by half a point. It was already relatively low, in my opinion, to begin with. But now it's now at a 30-year low. And I wonder what 2021 score, how that compares with the other years. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't look to see if I could find a chart that kind of shared that information. But the thing about this article that's very important is that, again, this is the lowest levels in more than 30 years. And people are asking, like, why is this happening? What could be the reason? And the fact of the matter is the pandemic had a huge part to do with it, kids being out of school and us assuming that kids were being, would be properly, educated within the confines of remote learning, and also be able to get all the supports that they should be getting in the school building. But of course, because of the pandemic, we were remote. So what ended up happening was, kids were getting the best they can get within those circumstances. But this is where it gets weird for me. Okay, let me see. I gotta open up this article right here, because it's not just about the SATs. And just why would be on this? This is an article from Monday, October 10th. It says, and this is from Fox News. So I'm going to be, center and not sway between conservative or liberal news. But this is an interesting article nonetheless. It says Biden's equity-obsessed education secretary dodging academic priorities amid catastrophic reading scores. Okay, again, Biden's equity-obsessed, Fox News. They just know how to write those titles, right? Obsessed education secretary, and they're talking about Cardona, Secretary Cardona, dodging academic priorities amid catastrophic reading scores. So those reading scores, okay, look at this. I'm just going to read through the first paragraphs, and that's Secretary Cardona in that picture right there. For those of you who don't know what he looks like, our first Latinx Secretary of Education, I believe, in the history of America. It says here, Biden's education secretary repeatedly stressed the importance of wellness and equity as center to the agency's priorities, despite the nation's children experiencing catastrophic decline in literacy. Look at me. Listen, I have an excuse. I am dyslexic, and as I'm reading right now, my brain is trying to keep the letters on the page. So I have my own coping mechanisms for my reading. But I digress. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona was blasted by parent groups and advocates for leaving out academics in a statement of priorities amid the Department of Education's annual report card indicating the largest score drop among, the largest score drop in reading among 9-year-olds since 1990. So, our literacy scores nationwide, and looking specifically at 9-year-olds, is at its lowest since 1990. That year, 1990. The ACT scores are also at its lowest since 1990. And I'm asking myself, is there a correlation here? Why, and again, we do have the pandemic as a factor, a major factor that we know and we can recognize that is in place and for why this is the case, right? But when you go deeper into this article, it starts talking about numbers. So again, as children struggle to read on grade level, the DOE has been spending hundreds of millions on equity-focused programs and grants. On Wednesday, for example, the DOE announced, and that's the Department of Education, $116 million in grants to support equity. Cardona said, "We're investing in schools and communities that have shown a commitment to intentionally serving students and closing opportunity gaps based on race." And again, this is important work, because race has played a major factor in the gap, the learning gap, the achievement gap, and in all reality, it is an equity gap. And I would never, like I said, I can't say anything against that because that's just fact. At least the fact that I've seen, based on my experience. People might feel differently. So now it continues. The DOE is also offering $1 billion in grants via the Safer Communities Act to advance equity and to create inclusive and supportive environments, says the DOE said. It is essential that educators consistently pay close attention to communities that face systemic barriers, Cardona said on September 15th. So, this is where my brain starts to kind of like grind a little bit. And this is where I have a question. But before I ask a question, let me pose my thought. And I need someone to tell me whether or not this is, whether I'm right or wrong. And that question that I do have to pose is this. We know our kids are suffering. They've gone through a lot. They've gone through a lot. The pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic, things were not great to begin with. I know this. I already had, prior to the pandemic, 14 years in the school system as an educator. They're not counting the years in high school and the time I spent in middle school here in America in the West Coast of California, right? And even back then, as a child, I can see that things were different. I remember being in the Boy Scouts. My mom made me join the Boy Scouts in California, and the troop that I was part of was mostly kids who were white. And these boys went to schools that I didn't go to. They went to University High School. A couple of them went to Beverly Hills High School, and they would talk about their schools and the things they had and the things they were doing. And it was nowhere closer to my experiences at Inglewood High School. I still love my high school, Inglewood, go Sentinels, but still, I could see Like, whoa, you guys do what? You guys go where? And I was like, that's crazy, you know. And I just had the sense that they were being prepared in a different way than I was at my high school. I had a sense that the resources at their school was much better. And but not only that, the schools were in Beverly Hills, in Westwood, and what's this community called? It slips my mind right now. Brentwood in Los Angeles. These are very wealthy communities, right? So the resources they have in their schools are very different. The resources that are in the school that I attended. You know, it doesn't matter if they had a public school. Their public school and my public school was very, very different in the same you know, county. And the kids now, because I'm thinking about, like, you know, my struggles as academically and the amount of stress it put on me as a struggling reader, as a kid who was in special education, as a kid who was determined to succeed because my family's African and we're like, we don't, my parents don't play with education, and my missteps in my education did cause a lot of stress, a lot of trauma for me, because it was a lot of pressure. So, and I had parents who were willing to put and were able to divert resources towards helping me, right? But I've worked my career primarily in communities where families are in dire straits. They're just trying to survive. So the school ends up being the only place that can provide the full litany of academic supports for their children. They can't afford tutors. They can't afford all these other extras to make sure their kids are prepared. So in these spaces where these kids are, you know, we have kids who are moving through from kindergarten to first grade, second grade, third grade, and on, and every year they fall behind because there are certain skills they should have mastered in second, third, fourth, and fifth grade. They never quite mastered. So what ends up happening is that they keep moving forward and they keep falling behind. And what are they falling behind on? Literacy. What is literacy? Let's be honest here. In all essence, in the beginning, reading. When you have children who can't read, or reading behind grade level, or way behind grade level. I've seen 16-year-olds who are barely reading at a third grade level. I've seen 17-year-olds who are barely reading on the fourth grade level. And my thing is, what does that do to your emotional state when you're sitting in the classroom and the words on the paper in front of you are illegible to you because your brain, because you struggle to put together the letters to make the words, like your comprehension, your ability to comprehend what you're reading is non-existent. What does that do to you emotionally? And then you in a lot of situations you kind of get pushed forward. You're struggling in the second grade, you move to the third grade, and you never quite catch the third grade content, and you move to the fourth grade, and you're still stuck in the third grade skill sets, and you move to the fifth grade, and now you're in middle school, and the school is trying to find a way to catch you up, what you should learn in third grade, and they're doing the best that they can with the resources they have, because again, a lot of schools don't have reading specialists. They don't have in the schedules for someone to sit with a child, but a lot of kids need somebody with them, hours per day, working on phonics and those skills to help them be proficient readers. But a lot of our kids never make it to proficiency, and they keep getting pushed forward. And the emotional toll, that's my question. Is it possible that when you fall behind like that, and you know you're behind, and then you're sitting in the classroom and you're unable to do the work, and then you're embarrassed and you don't want anyone to know, what's that impact of that on a child's psyche and their mental health? That's my question. I know it took me a long time to get to that question. What is the mental impact? What is the impact on the mental health of children when they are academically behind? You know, I have a comment here. Let me see. Let me straighten this up. Okay, here we go. TW. First off, what's good with you as well, my brother? Here, there is not fair distribution of resources and foundational necessities to provide children with fair and equitable education. The need for education that fit the community of students. I, I cannot disagree with you on that because again, as a principal, I was always fighting for resources for my kids, always fighting for resources, and often I had to make things work or even do triage to make sure that I can shift things the right way to support the neediest of students. And all I ever always wanted was to be able to support all students equally and give them what they need. But that's not always possible. That's not always possible. TW also says a lot of our students are adapting to technology, to the technological age, where they only seem to use literacy skills in casual environments when they feel it's necessary. And that's a good point. Excuse me. Often people say something. I've heard people say this with technology, like, wait a minute, it's not a literacy problem because look at the kids are using their tablets and they're on their phones and they're texting and everything else. Have you read those texts? Have you read those texts? You know, do we really understand what kids are consuming? You know, with technology in social media, most of the time it's images and shorthanded text. So what we think that they're getting is not what they're really getting. You know, or what how we think that they're using literacy is not what's not really happening. And I've seen people out there say, you know what, let them keep texting, let them keep whatever, you know, it's helping. No, it's not. Listen, it's not. Because trust me, I've had to read pages and pages of text messages going back between kids who were beefing, and I'm reading through it and I'm like, even in your text, it makes no sense. You know? And again, how is this impacting their mental health? Because one of the things I will say is this: if we're spending all this money on equity and on equity and the social emotional health of our children, why aren't we addressing the root cause? At least one of the root causes. When you're behind and you're struggling in school, what's going to happen is you will, you know, try to hide that thing, because when you're in school, it's very public. Your classmates see it. Your teacher sees it. When teachers telling you to concentrate and focus, or telling you try harder, and your parents are telling you to try harder. And the problem is this: the foundational skills that you needed, you never received, because maybe in the third grade your classes were so crowded, the teacher was only able to do so much with so little. Maybe at a point in time when the skill was really being built upon, maybe your family was going through something, maybe you were going through some sort of housing insecurities, and maybe your attendance during that time frame was really poor that year, and you missed out on that. There's many factors. TW also says children feel unsure and insecure if they're not meeting the same standards as their peers. Exactly. So my question now, if we're going to put billions of dollars, 116 million into these spaces, what would it look like if we put the same kind of money into providing our children with intense, loving, secure spaces to really become proficient in the skills that they will need to move on to the next grades and even up and beyond that? That is my question. You know, what would happen in those spaces? Please, if you're interested in dialoguing with me directly, the URL again is tinyurl.com/tsp-video-guest. If you go ahead and put that into your web browser, it will take you to a screen. You put your name in there, and you just go ahead and connect with me. It will put you into the waiting room, and then, you know, when I see you in the waiting room, I will pull you up on screen, and you could chop it up with me. That's if you're willing to be on camera and show your face to the world. If not, if you just want, let's say you want to be anonymous, and what you could do is also shoot me an email at askthesneakerprincipal.com. in the subject line, make sure you put in there, I have something to say, and just pose your question in the email. And then what I'll do, and then put your number on there if you want me to call you. And then I'll read the question, then I'll shoot you a phone call, and we could talk. And again, that's for you if you want to be anonymous, hide your face, and you just want to use your words. And again, that's completely up to you. The this is something that's really on my mind here, because our children are resilient. Off the bat, they're resilient. I've seen kids, rise up from the lowest of lows, of circumstances, and especially when they are being provided with what they need to be successful. I've worked in schools where kids who have told me, and again, I'm going to speak specifically about high school kids. I don't have enough data from younger grades like elementary school, but I can tell you secondary school, middle schoolers, and high schoolers that I've sat with and had conversations, and the one thing that I've heard consistently, the biggest complaint and the one request consistently is, can we get a good teacher? Can we get somebody who can help me with whatever this thing that I need help with? And the schools that I've worked at where we've been most successful is because we had a very intense focus on literacy. I worked at MS 331 in the Bronx, where one thing that we did there, we created spaces that literally, we were like this. Literacy happens in every content area. We had a coach who came in there and worked with each of the teachers, and we just focused on literacy foundational skills, reading, comprehension, writing. We went old school. We didn't believe in this whole, we don't want to make the kids feel bad, so we won't use the red ink. No, we use the red ink. We explain to the children, and the students, this is why we're doing this. Let's just build that stamina and be able to look at your work being critiqued, and then you sit there and you correct it, submit it again, and see that red ink get less and less and less until you have perfect paper. But I've been in schools where I'm looking at bulletin boards, and you literally see a paper put up in there with a happy face on there, and great job, and you're reading through it, and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm reading right now. But it's a greater concern with how the student feels than helping them master the skill. But I'll tell you right now, once I got good at reading and writing, and all of a sudden I was getting those papers, and teacher was telling me, great job, I love the way you put these two thoughts together and your conclusion. Man, my ego and my pride was off the roof. And I was like, yes, I did that. Not a happy face, good job. And I'm just walking home saying, I did a good job, but I really didn't. And because my literacy skills are so low, I don't even know I didn't do a good job but the teacher told me I did a good job. Then I move on to the next grade, and worst of all, I get to college, and all of a sudden, I realized that I can't write or read on the level that I need to do in college. And then I find myself in remedial courses and maybe even dropping out. And that's a common story with a lot of our children. I see some comments here on LinkedIn. Kimberly here says, I think the emotional impact of academic struggles in schools is not noticeable for the individual. Nowadays, young people use technology as an escape from their reality. And you're right about that. One thing about technology is this. Technology does one thing really, really good. Because when they're using the devices and technology, it's a hybrid, it's media. I guarantee you, if social media was all written text, no video, no images, and you just had to write, then I'd be like, listen, our kids are going to become phenomenal writers, because they're going to have to figure out what is being said. And if the computer would only allow proper sentences to be in return, sent back to whoever sent the original message to you, you would see that'll be great. But what happens when you're on a device, between the images and the sound and everything else? I know kids who don't even type; they just voice record everything. I've seen it. Kids who just literally voice record. So that skill that they need to be able to be successful beyond school it's literally atrophying. In some cases never developed. Kimberly also said kids can focus on many things outside of academics. Um, and and you're right, they can. Um, but one thing I want to say is this. Let me see something here. Can you put a link to the chat? I'm sorry. I'm just reading. So TW, you said, can you put a link in the chat to the join option? I'm sorry. Join option for which one? If you could just clarify that for me, that would be awesome. Um, right now, all the chats in here, the chat that I'm seeing on my screen for here is on YouTube, but I'm also seeing chats here on LinkedIn. So if you could just clarify what you mean by that, that'd be awesome. So, so Kimberly, I'm assuming that actually maybe I might have read your first text wrong. I think the emotional impact of academic struggles in school is not as noticeable for the individual. Nowadays, young people use technology as an escape from their reality. Okay, and then you said kids can focus on many things outside of academics. You're right. Kids can focus on many things outside of academics. But think about this. Kids eventually become adults. And in their adulthood, I'm going to say something that might be a shocker to a lot of people. I do not believe college is okay. Let me make sure I may say this correctly. When people say college is for everyone, I don't believe college is for everyone. In the sense that I don't believe that everybody needs to go to college. I think we live in a time frame now where we need to be financially more intelligent financially on how on in our understanding of what college is for. And I went to college. I don't regret it, but I regret the way I went to college. I wasn't given the proper guidance of what college was really for. You know, I was told college was for me to get a job. That's what I was told. You go to college, you do well, so you can get a good job. But that's not what college is for. Yes, there are certain jobs that require you to go to college to get certifications to be able to have that job. For example, doctor, lawyer, you know, being a principal, being an educator, being a teacher, you know, there's certifications that are required. Now, college as the ground basis of having the functional skills to function at a high level, you know, intellectually in society, yes, you can make an argument for that. But if you're making an argument for college for jobs, then what ends up happening is there's a huge fallacy there, because I know people who did not go to college, who are entrepreneurs, who are doing really well for themselves. But the one commonality that they all have, those who are doing it at least legally, you know, and yes, there are people out there who are making their money in ways that might be questionable. I'm talking about this, just the traditional, like you're not doing anything that's issue morally or that's an issue legally. You know, like I'll give an example. You know, if like a Bill Gates, I know that's a poor example, but he didn't graduate from college. He doesn't have a degree. But, you know, again, some people might say, well, he came from money and that's different. Okay, fine. But there are people who didn't come from money, who use their strong academic skills. And when I mean academic, like their strong literacy skills. You know, they can read, they can write. You know, if they're given a contract, they can sit down with a contract, or they have enough sense to sit with a lawyer and say, what does this mean? You know, versus somebody who is illiterate, who might be barely able to put two sentences together. So the reason I'm saying this is now, yes, children have many things outside that they're interested in, and they can focus on outside of academics. But name one thing that does not involve some level of critical thinking, some level of being able to decipher text, whether on a high level or low level. Those things are necessary. You can't get around it. I cannot think about a single thing that I can say that children can focus on that's completely outside of academics. And what I mean, let me not even say academics. I'm talking about literacy, just being literate. think about this. Literacy is so important that let's say a doctor says, here's your medication. Here's 2 or 3 medications. If you can't read what's on a pill bottle and you can't decipher what the dosage is, you could die. That's literacy. You know, if you had to read instructions on a map on how to get somewhere, literacy. I'm talking about just the basic day-to-day skills. And those things can be tied into kids' interests in other spaces. It doesn't have to be the traditional sit in the classroom and see spot run. There's other ways we can enhance our children's understanding. But the problem is we have to make that a priority. And my argument tonight is that, not even an argument, just a question I'm putting out there. How can we get balance so that we're not just putting monies in one side and not recognizing that there's this other thing on this side that is literally impacting and causing the issues that we're having right now. And my argument is that our kids are struggling, and that's having a mental incredible toll on their mental health. I would like to see some of that money being spent on how to better staff schools or better train teachers or better attack this issue that we have with literacy. Again, our reading scores for 9-year-olds are the lowest that they've been in 30 years. In alignment with the SAT scores. Let me see here. Let me check the emails real quick. Okay. So TW, you said you sent the email. I don't see it in here. I don't see it in here at all. However, let me do this. I'm gonna put it in the comment for you. If you want, if this is the I just put it in the comments right there. That's the link for you if you want to jump onto the live call, and the email. I'm gonna put it in here. I don't know why, why I'm not seeing your email, but I'm gonna put it in here as well, just in case. But as of right now, I see no emails coming from you. I apologize for that. But again, try send it again, if you're able to get in there. So if the email goes through, and I'll definitely pull you on. But if not, you can also, if you're not opposed to that, you can also use the URL and jump on the call live. And what we could do, if you don't want to be, okay, here you go. Here you go. So answer this call, and
What's going on, big bro?
What's going on, Mr. Walker?
I like your subject content. I like that you're saying that. I'm a sub right now, so I get a chance to go into different classrooms and different schools and really get a chance to tap in with the kids. And I've learned that kids love to come when they can be heard. A lot of my kids, they'll come in, they'll be heard, and I get a chance to help them with their math, or whether I'm teaching English, I get a chance to actually use verbiage that they understand. A lot of these kids want to go to college. They want to be rappers. They want to be football players. And I say, just learn the basic skills so you can survive in society. That's what I
Go ahead.
That's just what I teach. And I try to use culturally relevant educational, curriculum in order to teach. So, lesson might be, over reading or literacy. So I'll use a story from someone's culture. If I know if I have a majority Hispanic class, or if I have majority African American class, or if I have a majority white class, I try to present the curriculum to where it's relevant to them. A lot of the kids, they understand by fashion, they understand by the language, they understand by societal standards. But a lot of them don't understand how these nuances contribute to make, the curriculum that we have. And I explain to them the skills that you use, the skills that you learn, are to help you to creatively navigate adulthood. Because once you leave middle school and you hit to be a freshman, that's when the fear sets in. You know, by the time you're a senior, you're like, okay, I'm about to be an adult. This stuff is getting real now. So, you know, and then they want to go to college, but a lot of them say, well, you know, I'm not performing well in school. So, you know, most of my uh, educators will tell me, nah, why don't you try a trade school, which is not the problem. It's just knowing where you fit in society, in the societal structure, I believe.
I agree with you 100%. Let me ask you a question. So have been in the classroom as a sub. What is your assessment on the literacy levels, like just reading skills that you see? Like what age groups do you work with? First off,
I've worked with middle school and high school.
okay, perfect, perfect. I know that world very well. It's a middle school principal and a high school principal. So in the classrooms, have you come across any situations that shocked you, where you were just like, "Wow, like this is maybe a child who's like super low that you wouldn't even know it until you actually saw their writing, or maybe you're trying to have them read and you're like, what, wait a minute, what's going on here? Have you had that experience yet?"
Yes, I had it when I was teaching math. Learning one of the most complicated, I think, sections for our kids was word problems.
Mm-hmm.
If I have the problem out in the numbers and I point out the numbers or highlight the numbers, kids can almost adapt to that. But if I have you just read and try to creatively pick out what factors are necessary to solve the equation out of the word problem, they don't have that skill. A lot of the kids can barely read on a third grade level. Listen, some of it's not their fault. And some of the kids will just tell you, listen, my teacher would give me a piece of paper, put it on my desk, say, finish this. It should be either on her phone or adapting to something else. And a lot of times it's teachers get so distracted because it's behavior management instead of academic management, which
Yeah.
if we I like what Kaba Kamene says. If you see a kid who is standing up and he's drumming, but he's still got his eyes on you, he's paying attention. It's just his learning style. Some of us don't learn just sitting down and you just giving that kind of documentation and saying, "Oh well, you'll finish this, and if you don't finish this, you're not smart." Well, sometimes it takes to adapt to the level of the child. Sometimes it's like we had. I know one high school says back to the basics, and that's where sometimes after the COVID year, a lot of teachers will say it's the COVID years. These freshmen that we're getting in now have been COVID children for 2 years, either online or having to do work on their at their own pace. And if you give a child to do it at their own pace without any guidance, you set them up for failure.
Man, facts, facts on so many different levels. Um, you said the one thing you said that again that I need to kind of highlight. You talked about third grade level, and there was this thing that went out. I don't know if you've ever heard this before. That went out. The people were talking about a couple of years back, and some people are saying it's an urban myth, but I feel like there's some truth behind it. That there's a correlation between the number of prisons built in America that primarily houses, let's be honest, your black and brown children, in alignment with third grade reading scores. You know, almost like if by the third grade, if you start to fall behind, there is a correlation that feeds into that you're on a path that will put you in a position where you're more likely to be in a space of committing crimes and even going to prison. you know. And it's funny because people, I mean, if you go online and look it up, people will say, "Oh, it's an urban myth that ain't come from nowhere." But the one thing I know is that's a fact is that there are prisons across this country that are sitting empty. What are they sitting there empty for? So sometimes so when you said third grade, it sparked that thought in my head. I was like, "Whoa, third grade, that's where you should be able." Listen, by third grade, you should be able to read full sentences, you know. And I keep finding a lot of kids that they're in middle school and high school who are on that around that third grade level. Something happened in the third grade where they never got past that. And the question is, what do we do? What do we do about it? So I'm gonna ask you this question: what should we do about this?
I think initially we should really, instead of putting, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll test a kid based off of a given standard, right? And if you
Yes.
test a kid based off of given standard, or you test them off their state standards, a lot of the kids do not complete these standardized analysis to the best of their ability. Now, if I get a kid, like for instance, today, I had a kid today who was not as coherent with math. He said, I'm not going to do math. I said, well, let me sit next to you. You got to get he was at a 55. I said, let me get you to an 80. And what I did is, as I walked him through it, we call it in the military, we call right seat ride. So I walked him through it, and then after a while, he said, hold up, let me go ahead and take this real quick. So he did one or two. I celebrated him, from the side, and still gave him a little technical guidance. And then I let him do the last 4 or 5 problems by himself. So by the time he got to the second problem where he had to do it by himself, there was no stumbling, because now he had a reassurance that what he was doing was accurate. You're reinforcing that you're doing a good job. Two, he understood the principles. Like I tell a lot of the math kids, once you understand the principles, once you understand that there are certain rules, you learn these rules, and they become almost like how you would do on social media. There's certain standards on social media. You can't post certain things. You have to understand. You have to understand the process of things. Kids understand the processes, but instead of the processes, we need to teach them that these sequential rules that we have, as far as like with reading, what an adjective is, what a noun is, what a verb is, they use it quite often in their language. But as far as putting that to paper, or reading that in an expression, or understanding what the main point is, or understanding what the author is trying to say, or understanding just basically, this is a noun, this is the adjective, this is the verb, and this is why this is set
Call
up that.
from Kim.
It's a little it's a little bit it's something that we have to do. And sometimes with our middle school kids, I think what they should do before you pass proficiency from the eighth grade to the freshman year is give them a refresher course. Even before you leave from the fifth grade up to the sixth grade, you should have a refresher course before you enter from the third grade. Now, at the third grade, like you said, the level, if you don't get it by the third grade, that should be the most intense level. That's when we should put, when you were a kindergarten, they broke down phonics words. When you were a first grader, they taught you sentence structure. When you were a third grader, you're understanding the complexity of how these nuances go together. Sometimes you have to refresh the kids in high school and middle school like that, because maybe at that time they weren't, like I said earlier, they were unsure. Somebody may embarrass them. Somebody might tell them, listen, hey, all you do is cause trouble. So why should I waste my time to try to read with you? So I think it should be more progressive on, instead of setting these kind of guidelines to where we can introduce new ideas, let's just look at the core of the problem. These kids oftentimes don't relate to the content. They don't relate to what they're reading. So that's why I said earlier, provide something to them that they have seen in their culture, in their community and around them. That way they can kind of point to that idea. That if you have something about a kid who lived in the hood, and this is what he went through, 9 times out of 10, our urban students will be like, oh wow, yeah, I've been through that. So now he wants to read it. Some of these kids like the excitement that social media provides, that right away excitement. And so books and some of the information we got, about the topics that we have to explore, you provide that aha moment, and then you celebrate them. I've celebrated within class. I've had dialogues over the topics, even if we cut the sentences short, or cut the story short. We give them a chance, and I point it out. So then as we go through the article or the book, they can start pointing them out. And then I get excited with them because they are accomplishing that. So then we take out the insecurity and the embarrassment, because everyone is exposed and everyone is able to participate. And when you participate either as a group or individual who is providing new information, kids love that stuff.
Very right about that. Brother Walker, thank you so much. I have a caller that just hit me up, so I'm gonna get him on. I'm gonna get him on. And again, I appreciate you, brother, and we'll
Thank
talk
you.
soon. All
Say hi
right?
to say hi, Uncle Uche. Say hi, Uncle Uche.
That's my niece right
Hi,
there.
Uncle.
Hey,
Hi, your uncle. All right, big bro.
All
Thank
right,
you so
man.
much, man.
No doubt. And I have someone in the guest in the green room. I think that's Katie. Please, please, please bear with me. I have a call back I have to make right now. I had someone here who was trying to call in, and I didn't want to interrupt Brother Walker. So let me go ahead and call this number right here. And this is my first time actually using this. So hopefully this works. Hello?
Hello. Good
Hello.
evening.
Good evening. Good evening. How are you doing? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Do you want to share your name or you want to be anonymous?
Oh, I can say my name.
Okay. So go ahead. Listen, sometimes, I want to respect teachers. If you're a teacher and you might have a mean principal, I don't want you to get in trouble for anything you might say.
Oh, that's very respectful. But my name is Kim.
Hello,
My
Kim.
full name is Kimberly, but I'm known as Kim. And yeah, so I'm fine with that.
Okay. So, Kim, talk
So,
to us. What are your thoughts?
well, oh gosh, I have so many thoughts, but I think I'm going to start with my basic premise. My basic premise is that American families are failing, that it's not our schools that are failing, it's our families that are failing. And our schools have been trying to put up a good faith effort and work extremely hard in trying to support these families and keep them from failing. And I think that's what you described when you said a lot of the support that the school can provide to certain students. And if they get all those supports, if the students are very resilient, if they get what they need, they can survive and they can prevail and they can succeed. And so that is true. But what I believe is, based on what you said and based on what we have observed, that since our American families are failing, once the pandemic happened and that the students were within these families that are crumbling, that they crumbled with them. And so now that they're back in school, they're so far behind because of that. And so now I think we're at a position where we are really struggling and trying to figure out what do we do when you talked about those ACT scores being at a 30-year low. That's really traumatic. Even though it's a half a percentage point, that's a lot of data for a half a percentage point. That is profound.
Yeah.
So I believe that we are at a cusp right now, and I haven't seen anyone who has any real answers. And I know we're going to have a lot of people, we're going to put a lot of things together to say they can fix it. But I don't know what's going to happen, because I think the bottom line is our families need to be fixed, not our schools.
So how? So what? I know this is a very big question and it's multi-layered. Give me three, three thoughts of how you think we can even start the process of fixing families.
That's a good thing. I think that we've had discussions about fixing family, about like even before the pandemic, they were talking about, a basic wage, bringing up the minimum wage, housing, health care. We've talked about the things that we need to fix our families. And they know what we need to fix our families. They know what families need,
And
but they're
when you
still
say
not getting
they,
it.
when you say they, who are you
I
referring to?
mean, uh, government,
Government. Okay.
the institutions, the people who are in the know, like these institutions, all these universities who create all these curriculums and create all these programs, and they know you need. I mean, the data is there. The countries that their families aren't failing because they're giving them what they need. They have housing. They don't have housing insecurity. They don't have job insecurity. They don't worry about if somebody gets sick and then they're going to be homeless. They don't have these things. If somebody gets on drugs, they can get support for that person. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These countries, they do that, and so their families aren't failing, and so their schools look better than ours do, and their data looks better than we do. So we did a really good job in the education system. I'm a part of that system. You're part of that system. We did a really good job propping up this country and propping up these failing families and producing really quality students. I think we did an amazing job with that. At the same time, when they were telling us we were doing a terrible job, I think we did an amazing job. So now, I honestly, I've been in education since, I've been in education pretty much since 1988. I've been in it a long time. So, and now we're at a position where no one really knows what we're going to do. And no one's stepping up to say what they think is the right answer, because I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if you have. We haven't seen it yet, because we're in a very interesting point. And I believe we can come out of it, because I know America is a very great country and we're very strong, we're very resilient. I know we can come out of this. How we're going to come out of this, I don't know. But that's my belief in terms of where we are. And as it relates to the students, like, I try to steer away from focusing on anecdotals with students and things like that, even though I'm a teacher and I look at anecdotals all the time. But I think when you really want to look at the problem, you have to look at the aggregate, because that's the real problem. That's how I see it.
Kimberly, thank you so much. You're right. One thing you're very right about, and is the fact that as having been a teacher myself, and first of all, I have to say something to you. Thank you for your service. I feel like we often say that to people who in the military, but we never say that to educators, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I served in the military, just as my brother Walker served in the Army. But the fact of the matter is, there is a space that we function in this country that allows the country to prosper, and that is education. And since 1988, that is over 30 years of service to make sure hundreds and hundreds of children are prospering as adults. So for that, I say thank you. And you're right. You are right. Our communities are resilient, and we here in America, we are a resilient nation. But we have to start talking about this in a very authentic way and start to work towards answers. And I'll be honest with you, that's one of the reasons that I started this podcast, and I've even shifted the space to invite people to call in and talk, because again, we're not talking about this. I feel like these are conversations that we're having behind closed doors, at the water cooler, or at school at the water fountain, but we're not actually having this bigger conversations. So thank you so much for your contribution this evening, and I'm sure that a lot of people who are listening you've given them a lot to think about as well. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
So have a wonderful night.
Okay, bye.
And Katie, are you
Yes.
still there? Thank you so much for your patience.
Can you
I know
actually hear me?
I can hear you. And say something again.
Hello?
Yes, you're on. So
Okay,
talk to me.
thank you.
What are your thoughts? And again, thank you so much for navigating from Twitter to Facebook and to
No
YouTube.
worries. I was just like, I think I'm talking to myself here. Like, I don't know what's going on. And then I realized that you were taking the chat from YouTube. First off, I just want to say I'm a big fan. Never worked in Brooklyn, worked in the Bronx and Queens, still do in Queens, but honestly, I I'm a teacher, I'm not an administrator, but I feel like the things you put out into the world really exemplified what every administrator was going through during COVID, during everything. Like, it just, I don't fault you at all for your decisions, and I think they were the best thing for you. And I don't know you personally, but I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to say that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Um, no, no, I think, it gets to a point where you're just like, my health's gotta be a priority. And the thing I wanted to ask you about is, and I go to a lot of parent meetings and a lot of, you know, I teach high school, but the thing I'm starting to get really frustrated with is the loudest voices dictating educational policy in New York City. I don't know if you could speak on that, bro.
I can, and I'll say this.
Now you can.
Yeah, people have been telling me that, bro, you can say anything you want to now, and the fact of the matter is,
You can do whatever you want. You don't got to check with legal.
oh wow, oh, so I'll say this. The issue that I've had, and again, people who know me, they know that I'm not okay. I'm not necessarily a rebel rouser, but I am definitely. I'm going to do my thing, and as a principal, I did my thing. But my thing was whatever was in the best interest of my students. So
Right, respect. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not
I
at
was
a screen
yeah.
school. I'm not at a specialized. I'm at like mom and pop type school in Queens. Like, not not any of the things that people are pushing for.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this is my thing. There's so many of us in the in of us in school systems around the country who have a very clear vision for what school should look like, what our kids, what students need, but we don't say anything. That's the problem. We don't say anything. So the loudest voices is usually those few people who because they recognize that no because you're not going to say nothing, he's not going to say anything, she's not going to say anything, so I'm just going to go in and be loud and garner as much attention as possible. And you're right, the loudest voice usually gets their way. It's like a bully type mentality. But my
Right.
question has always been, what would happen if really if really teachers and administrators and people, and again, let me stop saying administrators, but all administrators are teachers who decide to be in the position to help in the running of a school building, but they're still
Truth.
teachers, and a lot of them forgot that. A lot of administrators have forgotten that you are a teacher, and do not let
Right.
the title fool you or the money fool you and all that. You are still a teacher. What would happen if we all collectively just said, listen, what is that we need for my school, for my classroom, and we started to demand these things, and really have a real conversation, you know. But again, because that's not happening, what ends up happening is, yeah, somebody has a bright idea and says, hey, we're going to do this, you know, and then that becomes the flavor of the day, of the month, of the week, until it's not working, and the problem that was intended to be fixed is never fixed, and it just gets exacerbated, and we're even in the worse position than we were before we started doing this thing. And
Right.
if it's a curriculum or a program or whatever the flavor of the day is, my thing has always been, we have to speak up. Again, I got beat up. Listen, I'll tell you right now, I got beat up in every school I've ever worked in, and I worked in, because I would always be like, okay, this is where I believe we need to go, and I built consensus, and often that consensus was not in alignment with the district.
Got you. And
But
you know what? I am very lucky in the sense that I have a great principal. I have a great superintendent for our high school district that just started, and she's dope and awesome. And it's not about that, it's more about the larger dynamic
yeah,
of New York City DOE and people, I'm at a citywide council for high school meetings before, and it's like you just you kind of know the direction this is going to go in. And when people are so fixated on specialized high school seats and screens and stuff like that, and you're like, that's a very small percentage of the entire student body. And like, I'm working at a high school that has no money, and that's what I care about. So I don't know. I guess I'm asking how to kind of just deal with, like, I could go to all these meetings. I'm a teacher, I'm on district advisories, like, I'll go to all the CECs, I'm on SLT, like, I'll go to, Queen's President's Council meetings. But when it's like the loud majority who are very concerned about certain things in regards to screens and specialized high schools, I don't know how to kind of deal with that. I could deal with parents that just want good schools. Like, I'm good with that. Like, they just want like someone to feel like their kid to feel loved in your building and be seen. But when it comes to this whole screening, tracking kind of thing, it's difficult.
When you talk about that like the screen, that is a problematic space. Those voices around the specialized schools and screening and things like that. And I'll be honest with you, the over the course of my career, I that's not been my. I've left that alone, because the schools I've worked at were schools where they accepted every child, and then in those schools we did what we needed to do to support those children. And I feel like those conversations are such a distraction, because again, with all the ills of in the schools and things that are happening, I'm always asking myself, what. Yes, we wanted. I mean, with the school screenings and specialized schools in New York City. For those of you who are not from New York City, that's it's very unique. It's a very unique thing, because I don't think most cities around the country even have this issue.
Oh, they're not segregating.
Yeah, it is. And I worked in and listen, I would say I worked in the building, my last building. That was something that was an issue there that a lot of people brought up about how schools, the screen schools versus the other schools in the building, how the hierarchy that occurred in that building, that was
Right, because some of them are
inequitable.
getting
And
fair student
yeah,
funding, spending above what they should, and yeah, I agree.
but again, this is my question: where are the legions of teachers and hand in hand with parents at the CEC meetings? Like, I've been to the CC meetings, and you're right. It's usually those who are going to have their way, who come in there and they bully everybody else. But then sometimes I wonder, what would happen if this room was filled with every single teacher from those buildings who has
I
something to
know, but
say?
I don't know how to make that. I mean, for one, I'm a high school teacher, so going to CEC meetings for the two districts that feed into my school is like completely voluntary. But what am I going to
Exactly.
say? Like, oh, can you guys
Yeah.
start coming to these meetings? Like, it looks like I'm kissing my principal's ass. I'm not. I actually like educational policy and seeing where it comes from. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely difficult, and
Yeah.
and it feels like a losing battle when you're a school that, has one code as a zoned code for high school. And you have people, screaming about, we don't have enough seats in Queens for specialized high schools. You do, actually. You just don't want to see the fact that you have schools that are underutilized because they're not the right schools.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this. I'll say this to you. Um,
Sorry, I
so
probably said a lot.
no, no, no,
You're
no,
like,
no, no.
you're
Everything
like
you're
putting the pieces together. Where does this woman work?
no,
Who
no.
is
I,
her
I, I totally get
superintendent?
it, because again, this feeds into the greater issue of resources and how resources are disseminated through schools, in New York City. And yes, there is a algorithm and everything they follow, but there's also a certain level of unfairness. But one of the things that I did, and again, Whether it was right or wrong, I just kind of focused. I literally just focused on my kids and said, "Listen, because I'm very competitive. I'm just like I'm going to do everything that I can with the little that I have to make sure that my kids got the best that they could with what we had." So, for example, last school year, I could probably say my last year leaving my previous school, John Jay School for Law in Parksville, Brooklyn, 100% of my graduating seniors got into college. 100% of the graduating
That is
seniors.
fantastic.
Okay, and we are not highly select. We don't screen kids. We don't handpick them. All my kids came from all of some of the poorest communities in New York Cities, from Brownsville and East New York and Flatbush and all these communities where literally they're not supposed to be successful. But the thing was
Right,
that
but they came into your
yeah,
building and they
yeah,
thought that this was an extension of home, and they feel loved and they feel
no,
supported.
They came on.
and
They came
that's
onto my
everything.
floor. They came onto my
Yeah.
floor because they
Sorry,
didn't
now
really feel
you're.
like that.
I don't know what's going on the other floors.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no,
yes,
but
your floor.
we are co-located building. We're co-located in the school with other schools in the building, and I created in my floor and a half. I created a space in there where low expectations was not acceptable from teachers, and I got hated for it. But I was like, listen, we are tasked with making sure that these children leave here with weapons of mass success in their tool belts. You know, so yeah, so that was my mentality. And again, the question you're asking is a great question because you're seeing firsthand the politics of education in New York City. You know,
Yes.
and the
I'm
fact that, man,
doing
most
that
people are not
stuff.
involved.
I'm doing that work on the school level. I don't mean to seem like I'm not, and maybe I should excuse myself from being involved in things on a more borough level or a more
No, you should be
citywide
there.
level.
No, you need to be there. People need to be there because, again, who's going to tell the story? Who's going
Right.
to tell the story? Because when you go to these meetings and things are happening there and nobody else knows about it, because it's not like it's public knowledge, but it's not like it's in the cover on the daily news what happens in these meetings. So what ends up happening is policies are made and things are done that we don't know about, and then all of a sudden we're like, "What? Wait a minute, what just happened here? How did we just lose a school in this building? How did this resource go to this other school?" You know, and again, it's very important because again, you're serving as kind of like an oracle. You're recording what's happening there, and again, your question is very important. What do we need to do to make sure that we have some level of control in those spaces? And the only question I can pose is, how do we get more people to be in those spaces within our school buildings? You know, but the hard part is everybody has their own self-interest, and some people just want to go to work and go home, and that's it. You know, and
I get that, and I'm not
yeah.
knocking anyone who doesn't want to be part of any of those spaces.
And neither am I. Neither am I. It's their prerogative. But again, but this is why we have the problems that we have in New York City, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in our big cities. Because again, think about it. These are public school dollars, but certain schools you walk into feel like college campuses, like college classrooms, and these are the same citywide taxes. There's a problem there. I'm sorry. There's a problem. For me, that's an issue.
There's a problem with, certain schools getting specialized dollars that aren't specialized school. I could go on for days, but I will touch base with you at some point.
Definitely.
But I appreciate you taking my call. I don't even know how to get off this. Or am I just on this forever?
No, just actually, I will send you off then. I'll just hit the red X on my screen. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you so much. Have a good night. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I want to thank Brother Walker. I want to thank Kimberly. I want to thank Katie for calling in. It's 11:15, and man, I could keep going. But before I jump off, I want to acknowledge Tank. Tank on the YouTube left a comment. Hey man, I'm a new sneakerhead. I'm really trying to get into shoes, but I'm not old enough to get a job yet. What should I do? So Tank, shoot me an email, and I'll spit you some game on how you can get into the sneaker game with low money, and I also turn that into a business. And that's kind of awesome. I got a question about sneakers. Because a lot of people forget. A lot of people completely miss the sneaker part. I am a sneakerhead. Right on this side right here. That's just a fraction of my collection, and it was also something that I used to connect with my kids as well. Because in urban settings, sneakers is an important thing. It was important when I was growing up, and it's important today. So, Tank, just shoot me an email at askthesneakerprinciple.com, and ask at thesneakerprinciple.com, and I'll respond back to you. So shoot me an email, so I have your email, and I'll shoot you some game. And again, Brother Solomon, thank you so much again. Brother Solomon says that this was another great episode. I appreciate that. Thank you for everyone who listened this evening. Have an amazing night, and I need to get to bed because I got to be up early in the morning for work. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you again. And before I jump off, please subscribe, like, share, whatever that tool that button is on your platform. Please hit that button, and let's get more people into this space and more conversations next week. Not next week, on Friday. So I'll be back again on Friday night at 10 o'clock, and with some new stuff to talk about. All right, thank you so much, and I appreciate all of you, and have a great night.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.